Hi everyone. Tonight, you step into a winter night where the air stings your lungs the instant you breathe, and snow squeaks under your boots like dry chalk. You stand in a clearing with a log cabin ahead of you, its walls already crusted with frost, the sky darkening quickly as a storm gathers strength. The wind carries the scent of resin and cold iron. Your fingers ache as you lift the latch, and you understand this is not a cozy postcard version of the frontier. This is the kind of cold that tests judgment. You likely will not get through this without making careful choices. At least not comfortably. So before you settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I create here. And if you are awake somewhere in the world right now, share where you are and what time it is. Now dim the lights and allow yourself to step fully inside. You close the door behind you and the sound of the wind softens. Not gone, just muted, like an animal circling outside. The cabin is small. The logs are thick but uneven, their ends notched and stacked by hands that knew winter would arrive whether they were prepared or not. A well-known historical fact settles into your thoughts. Many frontier cabins were built quickly in late summer or early fall, sometimes in only a few days, because settlers understood the first deep freeze could come without warning. Speed mattered more than comfort. You can see that here in the rough corners and the floor that is more packed earth than finished wood. You set down what little you carry, and your breath clouds the dim interior. There is a hearth at one end, darkened from earlier fires. The cabin smells of smoke, damp timber, and something faintly animal. It is not unpleasant, just real. Outside, the storm begins to make itself heard more clearly. Wind moves along the walls, searching for every weakness. Snow taps against the roof in uneven rhythms. You listen because listening is part of survival. In the brief pauses between gusts, the silence feels heavy, as if the night itself is leaning closer. You move nearer to the hearth, touching the stones. They are cold now, but you picture the fire that will soon burn here, deciding whether this night becomes merely uncomfortable or genuinely dangerous. Historians still debate whether early pioneers focused more on nighttime warmth or daytime efficiency when designing their cabins, or whether both were simply compromises shaped by limited time and tools. Standing here, it feels less like an academic argument and more like a chain of small, urgent decisions. As you look around, you notice the chinking between the logs. It is a patchwork of clay, straw, and bits of whatever materials were available nearby. In some places, the filler has cracked and fallen away. Cold air slips through in thin streams. There is an unusual detail that does not always appear in textbooks. Some settlers mixed animal hair or even ash into their chinking to improve insulation, believing it strengthened the walls against wind and pests. Whether it truly worked remains a topic of discussion, but tonight you are thankful for every section that has held firm. You test a rough sleeping platform along one wall. It creaks under your weight, built from split logs placed side by side. There is no mattress, only the promise of blankets and hides you have yet to arrange. The ground beneath your boots is hard, frozen earth. You can already feel the cold rising, seeping upward like water through stone. This is the moment when the modern part of your mind resists. Surely people did not sleep like this night after night. And yet they did, because the alternative was harsher. The storm intensifies. Wind presses against the cabin and then pulls away again and again, as if measuring its strength. You think about the people who once stood exactly where you stand, listening to the same sounds, making the same calculations. How much would to burn now versus saving for later? How close to the fire to rest without risking stray sparks? Whether to eat a little more before bed or conserve food for morning. These thoughts are not dramatic. They are practical and steady. Survival often is. You light a small oil lamp, its flame trembling. Shadows stretch and shift along the walls, turning knots in the logs into shapes that seem to watch. Darkness here is dense, not like the gentle darkness after switching off a bedside lamp. When the light is gone later, the night will feel complete. That awareness settles within you, both calming and slightly unsettling. Your body begins to register fatigue. Not the mild tiredness of a long day, but a heavier strain brought on by cold and focus. Sleep tonight will not be simple surrender. It will be negotiated. You will lie down, listening to the cabin shift and settle, trusting that these stacked logs and packed earth are enough to keep the worst of the storm outside. For now, you take one last look around, memorizing the space, the hearth, the platform, the walls that separate you from the wind. Outside, snow continues to fall, and winter makes it clear that this is only the beginning. You draw a slow breath, steady yourself, and prepare for the night ahead. You step back outside briefly, because before you can rest, this place must feel more complete. A cabin is not finished simply because it stands. In winter, a shelter is only as strong as its weakest seam. The wind greets you at once, sharper now, carrying fine snow that finds your eyes and lashes. You turn your back to it and run your glove along the outer wall, feeling the rounded surfaces of the logs, still marked by axe strokes. Each log reflects urgency and necessity. Pioneers often raised these walls using freshly cut timber, sometimes still green, because waiting for wood to season properly could mean missing the short window before winter storms arrived. That decision mattered later, as green logs shrank and twisted in the cold, opening gaps no one had planned for. You recall how these walls were built, one log at a time, lifted with strength and simple leverage. No cranes, no power tools, just muscle, rope, and patience. The corners are notched so the logs lock together, a method borrowed and adapted from Northern European traditions. It is a recognized historical fact that many early American settlers brought log-building techniques from Scandinavia and Eastern Europe, where severe winters had already taught difficult lessons. Standing here now, you can sense that inherited knowledge in the way the walls resist the wind. You press your shoulder against the cabin to test it. There is a slight give, not weakness exactly, but intentional flexibility. A rigid structure cracks. A log cabin can shift slightly and endure. Historians still debate whether early builders fully understood this flexibility or discovered it through experience. Either way, tonight you are grateful the walls can bend without breaking. Snow gathers around your boots as you walk the perimeter. The roof rises above, steeply pitched. This too is deliberate. A steep roof sheds snow more easily, reducing the heavy load that could collapse a cabin overnight. Some pioneers learned this lesson through failure when flatter roofs gave way during severe storms. There is a quiet reassurance in knowing that every angle and overlap here exists because someone, somewhere, once froze, panicked, or lost shelter to winter. Cold air slips through the gap like water through a crack in ice. You kneel and press it tighter with clay, your fingers stiffening almost at once. It is messy work. Clay under your nails, straw clinging to damp gloves, and a small historical note crosses your mind. In some frontier areas, settlers mixed dried moss into the chinking. Not only for insulation, but because they believed it kept insects away. Whether that belief was accurate is still debated. However, moss did trap air, and trapped air holds heat. As you continue, the wind grows louder, and the cabin answers with low groans. Wood shifting against wood. These sounds could unsettle someone unfamiliar with them. You feel a brief unease, followed by recognition. A structure that lives and moves will make noise. Silence would be worse. Silence might suggest something has already given way. You stand and stamp your feet to keep the blood flowing. The storm has fully arrived. Snow blows sideways, covering your tracks almost as soon as you leave them. You imagine this land before the cabin stood here, open ground and trees, no guarantee of shelter. Building these walls was an act of determination, close to stubborn optimism. It declared, "I intend to remain here tomorrow." Back inside, you shut the door and slide the wooden bar into place. The change is immediate. Still cold but manageable. The walls perform their function by slowing the force of the outside world. You lean against them and feel the faint vibration of wind moving across the roof. It feels like standing inside a drum. You study the logs from within. Their inner faces are smoother, shaped carefully where hands pass each day. Tool marks cover the surface. Each one a preserved motion from the past. They are not decorative. They show labor completed quickly, sometimes under urgency. Tonight's rest depends on them. You move to the hearth and begin placing kindling. As you work, your attention returns to the walls again and again. Will they retain the heat? Will the fire pull air correctly? Will smoke rise and escape instead of collecting where you breathe? These are practical concerns. Poorly built cabins could fill with smoke so dense that sleep became impossible, forcing a choice between coughing through the night or letting the fire go out. Historians continue to debate how often pioneers rebuilt or heavily altered their cabins after the first winter. Some believe many early structures were temporary, improved only if families endured the season. Others argue that more foresight went into these homes than commonly assumed. Looking around, you sense both ideas coexisting. The cabin is rough, but not careless. You place several heavier logs near the hearth for later. The scent of freshly cut wood blends with the older smell of smoke. It steadies you. The cabin feels smaller now, yet more personal. Every space has purpose. Nothing is wasted. Even the air seems measured. You sit again on the sleeping platform, testing it with more attention. The wall behind it is thick, logs overlapping like folded arms. It is not the warmest location, but it offers protection from sparks better than sleeping near the fire. Many pioneers arranged sleeping areas with fire safety in mind, aware that one stray ember could destroy everything within minutes. It is notable how fear of fire and fear of cold exist together here, pulling in opposite directions. Outside, a branch breaks under heavy snow. The sound cuts through the storm, sharp and decisive. You pause to listen. The cabin responds with a soft creak, almost in reply. You begin to trust it slightly more. Not because it is flawless, but because it reacts. You rub your hands and prepare to light the fire. The walls are as ready as they can be. The storm has arrived. The shelter stands, and a long night lies ahead. You breathe steadily, allowing the wind's rhythm to fade into the background rather than remain a threat. Sleep will come later. First, warmth must be secured. You kneel near the wall again, this time inside, and the cold makes itself known more subtly. It moves along the floor, circles your ankles, and rises slowly, patiently, as if time is on its side. The fire is not yet burning, and every crack in the wall feels personal. You press your palm against a seam between two logs and sense a faint current of air. Not a gust, just a quiet stream, enough to take heat while you rest. You collect what is available. A bucket of clay stiffened by the cold. Dry grass saved from autumn. Pieces of fabric worn thin long before tonight. You push these materials into the gaps, using a stick when your fingers protest. The task is slow and uncomfortable, but important. Frontier life taught quickly that sealing a cabin was not a single event. It was ongoing work, repeated especially after storms as wood shifted and settled. Settlement records indicate that families often spent part of each winter day repairing chinking, treating it as routine upkeep rather than new construction. Cabins expanded when damp, contracted when frozen, and the spaces between logs constantly changed. What kept you warm last week might not succeed tonight. You see this clearly as bits of dried clay crumble under pressure, no longer attached to the wood. There is a faint earthy scent as you work, mineral and mixed with straw. It reminds you how much pioneer survival depended on immediate surroundings. If the soil was weak, the walls weakened. If the grass was fragile, insulation failed sooner. Survival relied not only on effort, but on location. A lesser-known detail appears in letters from settlers in colder climates. Some described stuffing old clothing into wall gaps during severe cold spells, sacrificing garments to preserve body heat at night. It was not ideal and left them short of clothing later, but it provided warmth when it was most necessary. The reasoning is clear. Fabric traps air. Air slows the cold. Comfort becomes secondary. As you move along the wall, the sounds outside intensify. Wind presses, retreats, then returns stronger, searching for entry. Snow hisses as it slides down the logs. At times, a sharp gust forces cold air through a recently sealed seam, testing your work. You pause, listen, adjust. The cabin feels like a temporary agreement between you and the storm. Modern researchers disagree about how effective chinking was during harsh winter storms. Some argue that even well-sealed cabins lost heat quickly, making the fire the main defense. Others believe careful sealing significantly reduced heat loss and allowed families to endure with less fuel. Sitting here, pressing clay into cracks with numb hands, The debate feels practical rather than academic. Even a slight reduction in draft changes how the cold touches your skin. You complete one wall and continue to the next. The routine becomes steady, almost rhythmic. Press, smooth, pack, continue. Your breathing evens out. The cabin grows quieter as fewer drafts enter. It remains cold, but it is a controlled cold now, something manageable rather than constant opposition. You observe the uneven logs. Some curve inward, others outward, forming pockets where air gathers easily. This irregular shape comes from hand-cut timber and limited tools. Precision was uncommon. Speed mattered more. Cabins were raised quickly, often with neighbors assisting, because winter did not wait for perfect results. That earlier haste is clear now. Months later, every awkward space you try to fill reminds you of it, and your knees ache from kneeling on the frozen ground. You shift your weight and feel the cold sink in deeper. Pioneers often spread evergreen boughs or animal hides across the floor near where they slept, not for luxury, but to limit heat loss into the earth. Dirt floors drained body warmth without mercy. You remind yourself to set your bedding properly later. The door presents another issue. Rough wooden boards are fitted together, with gaps that widen as temperatures drop. You press a rolled strip of fabric along the bottom edge, cutting off the strongest draft. It looks simple, even rough, but it is effective. Many cabins depended on such practical fixes. There were no perfect doors here, only versions that were slightly better than the rest. You stand and stretch carefully, feeling circulation return to your legs. The cabin's scent has shifted, less sharp now, more contained. Outside, the storm continues. Inside, the space feels somewhat steadier. You have not defeated the cold, but you have reached a working compromise with it. For a quiet moment, you stand still and listen. The wind remains strong, yet its sound is muted. The walls hold. The clay holds, at least for now. This is how winter nights were often managed, not through bold actions, but through small, repeated tasks carried out patiently and without complaint. You brush soil from your hands and step toward the hearth. The fire will be lit soon, but it will only help if the heat remains inside. You look back at the walls once more, tracing in your mind the seams you sealed. They will need attention again, tomorrow perhaps, or next week. Winter does not ease its pressure. As you arrange the kindling, you notice a slight change within yourself. Less strain in your shoulders, a quiet readiness. The cabin remains crude. The night will still be long. Yet the worst drafts are slowed, and that makes rest possible. Outside, the storm pushes on, unaware of your small adjustments. Inside, you take a steady breath and accept that, for now, this is sufficient. You have done what you can with the materials available. The remainder of the night will depend on fire, patience, and careful listening. When the walls begin to speak again, you tilt your head and follow the dark line where the wall meets the roof. The hearth is still unlit. Without its glow, the ceiling feels lower, heavier. Snow has started to gather above, layer upon layer, quiet but persistent. You picture the weight building gradually, as though testing how much the structure can endure before demanding more. The roof was built with a steep pitch. The angle should allow snow to slide away once it becomes heavy. That was the plan. Builders on the frontier learned quickly that shallow roofs invited failure. Early settlement records describe cabins crushed overnight, their occupants fortunate if they escaped before morning. That is why the rafters above you are thick, cut from young trees and placed close together. They creak softly now, adjusting to the cold. You step outside again, tightening your coat, just long enough to check the roofline. Snow slips down in small slides as wind shakes the frame. The movement reassures you. Shifting weight is better than weight settling. Some pioneers cleared snow during storms with long poles, especially when wet snow threatened to cling. Others trusted the roof's slope and hoped it would hold. There was rarely one correct method, only decisions shaped by fatigue and weather conditions. Back inside, you run your hand along a support beam. It feels solid, coarse beneath your palm. You consider how these beams were selected. Builders preferred straight trunks with few knots, aware that weak points could break under pressure. Still, flawless timber was uncommon. Often, the best tree available carried visible flaws that everyone noticed and quietly worried about. Sleeping beneath such a beam would never allow complete rest. Historians continue to debate how often roof collapses truly happened compared to how frequently they appear in later dramatic accounts. Some argue the risk was amplified by storytelling. Others reference diaries and settlement reports that mention regular repairs and near failures. Standing here, listening to wind drive snow against the shingles, you understand why the concern remained, whether collapse was common or not. The roof covering itself differs by region. Here, wooden shingles overlap like scales, each split by hand. Elsewhere, settlers used sod or bark, trading durability for insulation. Sod roofs held heat effectively but became extremely heavy when wet and frozen. Shingle roofs shed snow more easily but allowed more air to pass through. Neither option provided complete reassurance. Winter always discovered an entry point. You shift your sleeping platform slightly, moving it away from the room's center. Many pioneers avoided resting beneath the heaviest section of the roof when possible, choosing spots near walls where beams transferred weight more efficiently. It is a minor adjustment, yet it steadies you. Even limited control carries value on nights like this. The storm intensifies. Wind moves across the roof, pauses, then returns in waves. Each gust presses down just enough for you to sense it through your feet. The cabin responds with soft pops and low groans as wood fibers tighten in the cold. At first, such sounds unsettle you. Over time, they become familiar. You learn to distinguish ordinary movement from genuine warning. Tonight, the structure sounds strained but secure. You imagine lying down later, eyes closed, counting the seconds between creaks, deciding whether a particular noise requires you to sit up. Many settlers slept lightly during storms, waking often to tend fires, listen for changes, or clear snow that slipped through gaps into corners. Sleep was interrupted, uneven, yet still essential. There is a quiet closeness between sleeper and shelter. The cabin is not passive. It signals, adjusts, responds. You answer by listening. This awareness sharpens your senses. You notice shifts in wind direction, how snowfall changes from a soft hiss to a dull thud as flakes grow heavier. These details guide your rest. You remember a lesser-known entry from a homesteader's journal describing how they kept a hand axe nearby during severe storms, not for protection from animals, but to cut their way out if the roof gave way. Whether this was common practice remains uncertain, but the thought itself reveals the underlying anxiety. You look at your own tools and consider their placement. The possibility of collapse is not constant fear. It is more like a steady background note. It exists beside hunger, cold, and fatigue. You learn to carry it without allowing it to dominate your thoughts. That balance defines survival. Panic wastes strength, while ignoring risk invites it closer. You sit once more on the platform, testing the space above. The ceiling is low enough to trap warmth once the fire burns, yet high enough that sparks should not easily reach it. Many cabins bore scorch marks where embers rose higher than expected. Fire sustained life, but it also destroyed homes. The roof overhead shows darkened areas, evidence of previous near accidents. Snow strikes the shingles again, heavier now. You pause and listen carefully. Nothing shifts. The sound fades. Relief spreads through you gradually, like warmth returning to numb fingers. You breathe out and allow your shoulders to relax. The roof is holding, at least for the moment. Winter nights stretch on, and storms rarely move in a steady pattern. They surge, ease back, and then return with more force. You understand that you must stay alert, even while attempting to rest. Sleep here is not deep or complete. It is lighter, cautious. One ear remains tuned to the sounds of wood and wind. You step back toward the hearth, prepared to finally start the fire. The roof has proven its strength. It will endure if you respect its limits. You will not overload the loft with supplies. You will keep the flames controlled. You will pay attention. As the match ignites in your hand, you glance upward once more. Snow continues to gather and slide away. The cabin seems to breathe. You are still sheltered within it. That is enough to let the night move forward. You kneel in front of the hearth. The stone is cold enough to sting through your clothes. Firewood rests in a neat stack beside you. Each piece was selected earlier with care. Smaller dry pieces first, then thicker logs to sustain heat. Your hands move slowly and with purpose. Here, fire is not simple comfort. It is the line between waking and not waking. You strike the match, and for a brief second nothing changes. Then a thin flame appears, fragile yet steady. It catches the shavings, then the twigs, and finally begins to reach toward the larger logs. The smell shifts immediately. The sharp scent of sulfur fades into the familiar aroma of burning wood. Warmth does not arrive all at once. It spreads gradually in uneven waves, touching your face first, then your hands. Settlers relied on open hearths for cooking and heat well into the 19th century. Even when enclosed stoves became common elsewhere, transporting heavy cast iron stoves across rough frontier terrain was often unrealistic. A simple hearth built from stone and clay was more practical, though less efficient. Tonight you experience that compromise. Heat escapes quickly up the chimney, yet enough remains to make a difference. You tend the fire with care. Too much wood and it will burn too fiercely, using fuel you may need later. Too little and it will fade before morning. This balance was learned through observation, not instruction. People studied the color of flames, the sound of cracking logs, and the way embers settled. Fire had its own language, and those who understood it rested more comfortably. Smoke rises, hesitates, then drifts back toward you before finally finding its way upward. You cough lightly and shift a log. Ventilation is always uncertain. Early cabin chimneys were often loosely sealed, built from sticks and clay that cracked over time. Smoke could fill sleeping areas so heavily that doors had to be opened, even in deep winter, sacrificing warmth for air. Personal journals describe nights spent half awake, adjusting logs and airflow to keep smoke manageable. It was tiring work. There is ongoing debate about how dangerous indoor smoke exposure was for pioneers, but there is no doubt it shaped daily routines. Persistent coughing and irritated eyes were common complaints, accepted as part of the cost of staying warm. The fire settles into a steady burn. Stones around the hearth begin absorbing heat, slowly shifting from icy to merely cool. You extend your hands closer, careful to avoid burns. Firelight moves across the walls, filling the cabin with shifting motion. Shadows sway and stretch, giving the space a sense of quiet life. You pull a log nearer to the sleeping platform, placing it as a barrier between you and the cold wall. Many pioneers used furniture, storage chests, or stacked wood in this way, creating small pockets of retained warmth where they would sleep. Heat was uneven. You learned to follow it, adjusting your surroundings when necessary. A small crack from the fire startles you, then you smile at your own reaction. Tension fades gradually as warmth spreads. Your toes begin to thaw, sending sharp tingles up your feet. It is uncomfortable but welcome. You stamp lightly to restore circulation, then settle again. A lesser-known practice appears in winter letters from frontier families. Some placed a large stone or brick in the fire before bed, wrapped it in cloth, and set it near their feet while sleeping. It acted as a simple heat reservoir, radiating warmth for hours. You consider the idea. Supplies are limited, but the method is appealing. You glance at the woodpile. It seems smaller now that the fire is active. Fuel disappears quickly in cold weather. Trees that felt abundant in summer suddenly appear valuable. Settlers often rationed wood carefully, accepting cooler nights to avoid empty supplies later in winter. It was an ongoing calculation, balancing present comfort against future survival. The fire changes the cabin's soundscape. Logs crackle softly. Stones tick as they expand. The wind outside remains strong, but it no longer dominates. Inside, a steady rhythm answers the storm. You sit quietly, listening to both sounds together. You narrow the hearth opening slightly, using a flat stone to reduce airflow. The flames lower and become more controlled. This is how you want them overnight. Not dramatic, but dependable. Many pioneers banked their fires before sleep, covering embers with ash to slow combustion. The fire would smolder through the night, easier to revive at dawn. If done poorly, it could die out or flare dangerously. If done correctly, it was a small but essential success. Your face grows warm enough that you loosen your collar. The difference between the front and back of your body is noticeable. One side is flushed, the other still cold. You turn slowly, sharing heat more evenly. Sleep will not arrive quickly, but it will arrive. You notice soot layered above the hearth, marks built up over years of fires. Each layer represents a winter endured. These stains are not scrubbed away. They are accepted, even respected. A spotless hearth might suggest it had not been used enough. As you prepare to lie down, you reflect on how fire shaped sleep patterns. People often rested in shorter intervals, waking to tend flames or add fuel. Long, uninterrupted sleep was uncommon in winter cabins. Rest came in cycles, connected by firelight and habit. Modern sleep science could analyze this pattern, but here warmth matters more than theory. The fire remains steady as you arrange bedding nearby. You test the air once more, breathing deeply. Smoke stays mostly above, heat remains close. Outside, the storm continues, but inside a sense of stability forms. You lean back and watch the embers glow. This fire is your companion for the night. It requires attention, but in return it sustains life. You move closer, eyelids growing heavy, allowing the steady flicker to calm your thoughts. When you finally lie down, the fire is the last sight you see. Its light pulses softly, coloring the ceiling in amber. You listen to it breathe alongside the cabin. For now, it is sufficient. The night continues, but you are warmer than before, and that changes everything. You rest on the sleeping platform, eyes half closed, and immediately sense how the air feels different now that the fire has settled into a steady rhythm. It is warmer, but also denser. Each breath carries a faint trace of smoke, not enough to overwhelm you, but enough to remind you that warmth always has a cost. Your chest rises and falls slowly as you assess the air, deciding whether it is safe enough to surrender to sleep. Smoke drifts lazily near the ceiling, gathering in darker layers where heat lingers. The chimney draws, though not perfectly. That was typical in early cabins, where chimneys were often made of wood lined with clay instead of solid stone. With time, cracks appeared. Airflow shifted, and smoke moved in uncertain patterns. People learned to read these signs the way sailors read the ocean. A light burn in the eyes, a steady cough. These were warnings, not minor annoyances. You adjust your position, tilting your head so clearer air reaches your lungs. Many pioneers chose to sleep closer to the floor for this reason, where smoke was thinner, even though the cold was stronger there. It was not a pleasant trade, but it was one they understood instinctively. Breathing came first. Comfort followed, if possible. Letters from frontier settlements describe nights when smoke became so dense that families remained awake until dawn, unwilling to risk sleep. Other accounts tell of doors opened briefly in the depth of winter to clear the air, then shut quickly before the cold reclaimed the room. These were not unusual emergencies, but repeated difficulties woven into daily life. You notice soot covering the stones and nearby logs, muting their color. It flakes off when touched, leaving dark marks on your fingers. Over the years, this buildup reduced fire efficiency and increased smoke. Still, cleaning chimneys in winter was risky and unpleasant. Many waited for spring, accepting smoky nights as temporary burdens. There is ongoing discussion among researchers about how indoor air quality shaped long-term health on the frontier. Some suggest that constant smoke exposure worsened respiratory illness. Others argue that cold and poor nutrition played greater roles. As you breathe carefully now, counting slow inhales, the question feels immediate rather than theoretical. You reach for the oil lamp and lower its wick slightly, reducing both light and fumes. Light offers comfort, but it also competes with the fire for oxygen. This was another quiet calculation pioneers made without naming it. Every flame altered the air. Every small adjustment mattered. The sounds inside the cabin shift again. The fire crackles gently. The chimney exhales in uneven rhythms. Outside, the storm continues, but inside the smoke gives the room a hazy closeness. Shadows blur. Edges soften. Your thoughts slow with them. A lesser-known detail appears in some regional practices. In certain areas, settlers burned specific types of wood at night, believing some produced cleaner heat or less smoke. Whether this belief was fully accurate or simply tradition remains uncertain, yet such choices shaped nightly routines. You glance at the logs burning now, wondering how different would might change the air you breathe. You cough quietly once, then sip from a small container of water kept nearby. Dry air and smoke quickly dry your throat. Hydration mattered more than people sometimes realized, especially during long winter nights when fires burned steadily. Even then, water was rationed with care, often melted from snow and warmed near the hearth. Your body begins to relax despite the discomfort. Muscles loosen. Breathing slows. Sleep approaches not as a sudden fall, but as a gradual dimming. You remain aware of the air, prepared to wake if smoke thickens. This light alertness becomes second nature. You consider how modern homes conceal these concerns: vents, filters, sensors. Here you're the sensor. Your lungs signal when something is wrong. Your eyes confirm it. This awareness keeps you connected to the space even as your mind drifts. The fire shifts, a log settling inward. Smoke briefly grows thicker, then thins as the chimney draws again. You open your eyes, scan the room, then close them once more. It is a small interruption, reminding you that sleep here is taken in stages. You roll onto your side, tucking your hands close to your chest for warmth. The platform creaks softly. Somewhere above, the roof answers with a faint sound. The cabin continues its quiet exchange with the storm, and you are part of it now. As minutes pass, your breathing deepens. The smoke fades into the background of sensation, present, but manageable. You trust your instincts to wake you if danger increases. Many pioneers did the same, developing light sleep that balanced rest with readiness. You drift in and out, thoughts loosening. Firelight pulses through your eyelids, turning darkness amber and red. Outside, the wind does not cease, but it feels more distant now, as though the cabin has carved out a small pocket of calm within the disorder. Eventually, sleep settles more firmly. Not deep, not careless, but sufficient. Enough to let your body recover. Enough to meet whatever the night brings next. The air remains smoky yet breathable. The fire stays alive yet controlled. For now, the balance holds. You wake slightly as your body shifts, not fully conscious, only aware enough to feel the hard surface beneath you. The sleeping platform does not forgive pressure points. Split logs press through thin padding, reminding you that rest here is arranged carefully, not assumed. Beneath the platform, the ground holds its cold stubbornly, drawing warmth downward no matter how near the fire burns. You adjust again, sliding a folded hide beneath your hip, then another under your shoulder. Small adjustments matter. On the frontier, people learned to listen to their bodies at night, responding to numbness before it became pain. Sleep was an active process shaped by constant small decisions. Ignore discomfort too long, and it woke you regardless. Most early cabins had dirt floors for years before wooden planks were added, if they were added at all. Lumber required time and tools. Earth was immediate, packed firm, sometimes mixed with ash or lime to reduce dampness. These floors stayed cold even near the hearth. Moisture rose invisibly, chilling feet and bedding alike. Settlers often placed branches, straw, or bark beneath sleeping areas to slow the effect, though nothing fully stopped it. You feel the chill most clearly along your spine. The wall behind the platform radiates cold despite your earlier efforts to seal gaps. Logs retain warmth slowly and release cold efficiently. You turn again so your back faces the fire instead. Heat moves through layers of cloth, uneven but welcome. There is continued discussion among historians about whether raised sleeping platforms significantly improved warmth compared to sleeping directly on the floor. Some argue elevation reduced contact with cold ground and dampness. Others note that higher positions exposed sleepers to colder air and thicker smoke. Your body provides its own conclusion. Raised feels better tonight, even with new discomforts. The platform creaks softly with each movement, blending into the cabin's rhythm. Wood expands and contracts around you. Nails, if present, groan faintly. You grow used to these sounds. They stop surprising you and begin to offer reassurance. Movement signals stability. Silence would feel wrong. You pull the blanket closer around your legs. It carries a faint scent of animal and smoke, practical and familiar. Many settlers slept fully clothed during winter, adding layers rather than removing them. Undressing meant losing needed warmth. buttons and seams pressed into skin throughout the night, leaving marks by morning, yet few complained. Comfort was secondary to survival. Some records mention families rearranging sleeping positions during the coldest weeks, rotating places so no one faced the harshest drafts every night. Children often slept nearest the fire, elders nearer walls where temperatures were steadier. These decisions were rarely sentimental. They were practical. You press your palm against the platform beneath you. The wood is no longer icy, but far from warm. Heat from the fire rises and escapes more quickly than it settles here. This is why pioneers layered without hesitation. 1 blanket was never enough. 2 helped. 3 felt indulgent when they were available. A lesser-known habit appears in several winter diaries. Some people slept with their feet wrapped in extra clothing stuffed into sacks, forming simple insulation that stayed secure even when they shifted. It was not refined, but it was effective. You pull the fabric tighter around your ankles, following that same instinct. Your breath creates a faint cloud as you exhale. Even with the fire burning, it rises slowly and fades into the shadows. You find this quietly reassuring. It reminds you that you are still warm enough to breathe steadily. When the cold grows worse, breathing turns sharp and shallow. You have not reached that point. The fire shifts again, sending a brief wave of heat across your back. You sigh unintentionally. Your muscles loosen further. The platform still presses in certain spots, but exhaustion softens the discomfort. Sleep deepens in stages, like stepping into darker water. You briefly consider modern beds, designed for softness and ease. Then the thought passes. Comparison offers no benefit here. What matters is balance, warmth, and awareness. You adjust until your weight is spread evenly enough that no single point demands attention. Above, the roof murmurs as snow slides and settles. Below, the earth remains steady and cold. You are suspended between them, supported by rough carpentry and routine. This is how many winter nights were spent, balanced on simple structures that required resilience from those who used them. You pull the blanket closer to your chin, careful not to cover your mouth, hands tucked beneath it, fingers curled inward to conserve heat. The platform no longer creaks as often. Your movements slow. The cabin feels smaller now, more enclosed, as if leaning inward. Sleep does not come all at once. It gathers gradually. Thoughts lengthen and blur. Sensations soften. The hard edges of wood and cold fade into the background. You remain prepared to wake, yet you allow yourself to rest, trusting the fire and walls to endure. Outside, the storm continues its steady work. Inside, you settle into a delicate but workable comfort. The platform supports you. The blankets remain in place. Your body finds a rhythm that may last an hour, perhaps 2, before another adjustment becomes necessary. For now, that is sufficient. You stir again, not from sound this time, but because the cold has discovered another opening. It slips around your knees, settles behind your shoulders, and reminds you that stillness allows chill to spread. Without fully opening your eyes, you reach for another layer. Blankets, hides, whatever is available, all are used now. Winter sleep becomes a gradual layering of defenses. You draw a heavy hide over your torso. It carries a faint scent of smoke and animal fat, a smell that lingers through the seasons. These coverings were selected for density, not comfort. Thick hides held warmth better than woven cloth, though they were stiff and cumbersome. Turning beneath them required effort, and that effort often woke you before you could settle again. Most frontier households owned far fewer blankets than many assume. Textile production was slow, and purchased cloth was costly and difficult to transport. Families layered what they possessed. Quilts patched repeatedly. Wool coverings that scratched but insulated. Animal skins that shed hair across everything. You accept the texture against your skin, focusing on the warmth rather than the irritation. There is a common belief that pioneers slept under heavy piles of bedding. In truth, many accounts describe limitation. Coverings were shared. Children slept beneath the same blankets as their parents. Additional layers were added only when someone grew dangerously cold. You sense this careful use of warmth now as you adjust, cautious not to waste the insulation you have. You notice how the weight of the layers affects your breathing. Heavy coverings press gently against your chest, slowing each breath whether you intend it or not. It feels unexpectedly calming, as if steady pressure encourages rest. Some settlers wrote about this sensation, noting that heavy quilts made sleep seem deeper, even when cold lingered at the edges. A small detail appears in winter letters from rural settlements. Some families placed heated stones or bricks between blanket layers, not against bare skin, but wrapped carefully to prevent burns. The warmth lasted longer when contained this way, radiating slowly through the night. You shift your feet slightly, imagining that steady heat near your toes, wishing you had prepared one earlier. Your hands search for warmth instinctively. You tuck them beneath your arms or press them between your thighs. Fingers lose heat quickly, and numbness arrives before pain. People learn to protect extremities first. Frostbite did not announce itself clearly, it advanced quietly, reducing sensation before anyone realized. There is continued discussion among researchers about whether layered bedding was more effective than maintaining a stronger fire. Some argue that insulation around the body mattered more than the room's temperature. Others maintain that the fire was the primary defense, with blankets offering limited assistance. Lying here, you recognize elements of both arguments. The fire warms the space. The layers warm you. Neither alone would be sufficient. You roll slightly, redistributing the hides. The platform creaks once, then quiets. The sound blends into the night. Outside, the storm remains persistent, though its voice is softened by wood, clay, and cloth. Within your layered shelter, the world feels reduced in scale. Only your face remains exposed. Cold touches your cheeks and nose lightly. You lift the edge of a blanket higher, stopping just below your mouth. Breathing into fabric risks moisture, and moisture quickly becomes cold. This balance between coverage and airflow is learned through practice, not instruction. You recall a practical suggestion from an old homestead journal. Some people slept with scarves or spare cloth loosely draped over their faces, allowing breath to escape while limiting heat loss. It was not ideal, but it helped during the coldest nights. You test the idea briefly, then set it aside when the cloth feels restrictive. The layers grow heavier as fatigue increases. Movement slows and becomes deliberate. You feel anchored now, gently pressed into the platform by the weight above. Muscles loosen further. The cold does not disappear, but it recedes into a distant presence rather than an immediate danger. You listen to your breathing, steady and measured. Each inhale draws air warmed slightly by the fire. Each exhale releases warmth into the space beneath the blankets, raising the temperature just enough to matter. This small climate is fragile. One careless shift can disrupt it, requiring you to begin again. You remain still, maintaining the balance you have built. Some settlers wrote of waking to frost forming on the outer layers of their bedding, moisture from breath freezing upon contact with colder air. You reach out briefly and touch the edge of a hide. It feels cool but not frozen. Relief follows. Tonight, at least for now, the layers are sufficient. Your thoughts drift as sleep deepens. The fire crackles softly, a background presence rather than a demand for attention. The roof continues its muted exchange with the snow. The walls stand firm, wrapped in materials that carry the scent of labor and endurance. You feel unexpectedly secure. Routine, even harsh routine, offers comfort. You know that if the temperature drops further, you will add another layer. If the fire weakens, you will wake and tend it. Nothing here functions automatically, but nothing is unfamiliar. That understanding allows your mind to ease. You adjust once more, settling into a position that feels sustainable. Knees slightly bent, back supported by uneven wood, blankets tucked firmly in place. The weight settles evenly across you now. No sharp pressure points demand focus. The cold lingers at the edges, held back by routine and effort. Sleep grows heavier. Sounds begin to blur. Sensations soften. You remain aware of your body, of the blankets and the fading fire and the storm outside, yet they blend into one manageable presence. This is not the deep, uninterrupted sleep of modern life. It is lighter, threaded with awareness, but it is still rest. As you drift, the layers stay in place, doing what they have done through countless winter nights, preserving warmth, guarding breath, sustaining life until morning light returns to the cabin. You wake again, this time to a sound that does not fully belong to the storm. It is softer and nearer, a shifting weight, a low steady breath. For a brief moment, confusion passes through you. Then memory settles. You are not alone here. Close by, livestock move within the cabin, not from affection, but from necessity. In many frontier homes, animals were brought inside during the harshest cold, not always into the central room, but near enough to influence it. A simple partition, a corner stall, sometimes only a rope barrier, separated people from animals. The warmth they produced was steady and valuable. You feel it now, a faint pocket of heat drifting slowly through the room. A cow shifts, her hooves scraping against the packed earth floor. The sound is unexpectedly reassuring. Large animals generate considerable body heat, and in small enclosed spaces, that heat could raise the temperature noticeably. Some settlers believed livestock made the difference between a manageable night and a dangerous one. Others considered the practice unpleasant, pointing to noise, odor, and risk. The smell reaches you now, earthy, sharp, unmistakably animal. It blends with smoke and damp wood, forming an atmosphere that is not comfortable but deeply familiar to those living this way. Winter required compromise. Cleanliness yielded to warmth. Comfort gave way to survival. Historians continue to debate how widespread this arrangement truly was. Some suggest indoor animals were common only in extreme weather or in poorer households. Others cite architectural evidence showing stalls built directly into cabin designs, indicating it was intentional rather than improvised. Listening to the steady breathing nearby, you sense the truth likely depended on region and necessity. You shift slightly, adjusting your blankets as a draft carries warmer air toward you. The change is subtle but clear. Heat from living bodies differs from fire. It spreads slowly and unevenly, yet it endures. Fires require constant fuel. Animals produce warmth simply by living. That consistency mattered during long storms when firewood ran low. A chicken rustles somewhere, feathers brushing wood. Chickens were sometimes kept inside during severe weather to prevent freezing or loss to predators. They added little heat, but they represented security. Eggs when winter permitted, meat if hunger demanded. Even their quiet movements served as a reminder of what survival required. You consider the risks. Animals brought moisture, parasites, and the possibility of injury. A startled cow could overturn furniture. The kick could break bones. Illness spread more easily in confined spaces. These dangers were understood. They were weighed against the cold and often judged acceptable. Personal accounts mention children sleeping closer to animals during winter nights, drawn by warmth. Parents monitored carefully, balancing safety with benefit. It required quiet trust to allow a child to rest beside a living source of heat that could also be unpredictable. The animal shifts again, settling more firmly. The sound is heavy but calm. Without thinking, you mirror it, relaxing deeper into your bedding. Shared warmth moves gradually through your layers, softening the edge of the cold. It is not dramatic, but it is effective. Modern separation between human and animal living spaces feels absolute. Here it is flexible. Boundaries blur under pressure. Winter removes preference and leaves only necessity. Shelter becomes shared, whether planned or not. Some settlement letters describe animals appearing calmer indoors during storms, less agitated than when left outside. Perhaps they sensed security as well. Perhaps warmth reduced their stress. You glance toward the dim outline in the corner, breathing slow and steady, and the idea seems reasonable. The fire crackles quietly, joined by the rhythmic sounds of shared life. The cabin feels fuller, warmer, gently louder. You are no longer alone with the storm. The presence nearby steadies you, a reminder that survival here was rarely solitary. You adjust once more, settling into the warmth drifting your way. Gradually, smells and sounds recede as sleep deepens. The animals become part of the cabin's rhythm, another barrier against the cold. Outside, the storm continues without concern for who shelters within. Inside, humans and animals share heat, breath, and limited space, connected by necessity. You close your eyes fully now, trusting the combined warmth to carry you through the remaining hours of night. You are not fully asleep when another sound reaches you. It is sharp, sudden, and wrong in a way your body senses before your thoughts do. Crack, not from the fire, not from the wind. It comes from the walls. You open your eyes, pulse quickening, and listen. The logs respond again with a long, low pop, like a branch snapping under pressure. Intense cold has tightened the wood until it can no longer hold, and it releases that strain in brief, startling bursts. Such sounds are common in severe winter conditions. Still, they rarely feel harmless when heard in darkness. Frozen timber contracts as temperatures fall, and cabins built from whole logs respond audibly. Winter settlers knew this well. Many claimed they could judge the severity of the cold simply by listening to their walls at night. Louder, sharper cracks indicated deeper cold. Softer groans suggested gradual freezing rather than sudden drops. You remain still, counting breaths until your heartbeat slows. The sound does not repeat immediately. That distinction matters. A single crack is normal. A series could signal structural stress. People learn these differences through experience, lying awake as you are now, absorbing the language of wood. Researchers continue to discuss how much these nightly sounds disrupted sleep during extended winters. Some argue settlers adapted over time. Others suggest constant alertness strained mental health. Listening now, half awake, you understand how even familiar noises could keep the body tense. Another crack sounds from the far wall near the door. The animal in the corner shifts briefly, then settles again. That reaction reassures you more than anything else. Animals respond quickly to real danger. Their calm suggests the structure remains stable. You think about how these walls were built, logs stacked, notched, and secured together, relying on weight and friction rather than nails. This design allowed movement without collapse. A rigid structure might have fractured under similar strain. Flexibility was essential, even if it sounded alarming. Some winter journals mention logs splitting during extreme cold, forming fine fractures later filled with moisture and ice. These cracks rarely caused immediate failure, but they weakened insulation over time, requiring additional sealing and repair. Winter damage often revealed itself gradually, one sound at a time. You adjust your blankets slightly but stay mostly still. Movement creates noise, and noise conceals the subtle changes you are monitoring. The cabin quiets once more, leaving only the wind outside and the steady breathing of livestock within. The fire settles, its embers glowing faintly. A log drops inward with a quiet thud, sending a brief wave of heat across the room. The sound is distinct from the noises in the walls. You register it automatically, setting it aside. This is safe. This is normal. Your thoughts drift for a moment, picturing the same sounds heard by people decades or even centuries ago in similar cabins spread across great distances. The experience is shared, even if those people never met. Winter teaches the same lessons wherever wood and cold exist together. Another pop comes from above, probably a roof beam reacting to shifting snow. You glance upward, eyes adjusting to the dim light. Nothing moves beyond what should. The sound fades and you breathe out slowly. There is a pattern to these noises once you stop resisting them. Crack, pause, groan, silence. You let it pass through you, reminding yourself that the structure is doing exactly what it was built to do, adjusting, enduring. People often picture pioneer cabins as quiet and peaceful at night. In truth, they were active. Wood had a voice. Fire had a voice. Wind had a voice. True silence was rare and often more unsettling than noise. You find unexpected comfort in the steady exchange around you. Your eyelids grow heavy again. Each crack startles you less than before. Familiarity reduces fear. The cabin remains firm, and you begin to trust it more deeply. Not because it is silent, but because it reacts in consistent ways. You shift your head slightly on the folded hide beneath it, searching for a position where the sounds seem farther away. The nearby animal's breathing forms a steady rhythm, warm and grounding. The night stretches on. The walls will crack again. The roof will respond. You accept this now. Alertness softens into quiet awareness, a state that allows rest without complete surrender. As sleep returns, the sounds blend together. No longer sharp or urgent, they become part of the cabin's rough but honest lullaby. You drift, held by the understanding that noise here often signals survival. You sense movement before fully recognizing it. The cabin shifts slightly as a stronger gust presses against one side and then moves on. It is not dramatic. Nothing falls or tips. Still, your body reacts instantly, muscles tightening as if ready to brace. Even lying down, you feel linked to the structure, as though your weight contributes to its balance. The wind reaches the corners first. It wraps around the notched logs, testing each seam, pushing and pulling in steady pulses. The cabin responds with a subtle sway, almost unnoticed unless you are attentive. Early settlers describe this feeling, comparing it to standing in a boat at anchor, rocked not by water, but by air. Log cabins were never meant to be rigid boxes. Their strength came from weight and interlocking joints rather than stiffness. This design allowed them to absorb force instead of resisting it completely. Builders in windy regions learned to accept this flexibility, even if it unsettled newcomers. A cabin that moved slightly was less likely to fail. You focus on what you feel beneath you. The platform does not shift. The walls do not pull apart. The motion is shared, distributed, and that matters. In poorly built structures, wind could pry logs loose or lift roofs unevenly. Here, the response feels unified, as if the cabin understands the pressure placed upon it. Outside, the storm changes tone. The wind drops lower, deeper, carrying snow in thick sheets that strike the walls. You hear the impact, then the downward scrape. The pattern repeats again and again, almost hypnotic. You match your breathing to it. Architectural historians still debate whether settlers intentionally built cabins to sway or whether flexibility was simply the result of available materials. Some argue that joinery methods were chosen to encourage movement. Others believe the flexibility emerged by chance and was later recognized as useful. Lying here, feeling the cabin respond instead of resist, the distinction feels less important. What matters is that it functions. The nearby animal shifts again, hooves scraping softly as it adjusts to the same movement you feel. This shared reaction strengthens your trust. Animals sense instability quickly. Its calm communicates more than theory ever could. You hear the door creak faintly in its frame as air pressure changes. The wooden bar remains secure. Settlers often reinforce doors heavily during winter, knowing wind could force them inward if they were weak. A failed door during a storm meant immediate heat loss and serious danger. You appreciate the simple strength of the bar, secured by habit and experience. Another gust presses harder, and the cabin leans just enough for you to notice. Your stomach tightens, then relaxes as the pressure fades. The structure settles back without harm. This push and release continues like an extended conversation between wind and wood. You think briefly of cabins built on open plains, where little blocked the wind. Those settlers faced even stronger forces, relying on low profiles and careful placement to survive. In forested regions, trees absorbed some of the storm's energy, though falling branches introduced other risks. Every setting involved compromise. A faint vibration passes through the floor as wind moves across the roof. Snow slides, catches, then slides again. Each shift alters the weight above you. The roof responds with a muted sound, not a crack, but a settling sigh. You listen closely and recognize the difference. This is adjustment, not failure. Your body relaxes gradually. The initial tension fades as you accept the motion. The cabin is not collapsing. It is yielding just enough to endure. That understanding allows sleep to return, though lightly, always lightly. Some settlers wrote about placing heavy objects along cabin walls during storms, believing extra weight improved stability. Chests, barrels, even stones were positioned carefully. Whether this truly made a measurable difference is uncertain, but the practice shows how people sought control where they could. Tonight, you rely instead on trust built through observation. You roll onto your side, choosing a position where the movement feels less noticeable. The blankets shift, then settle. The fire continues its low burn, unaffected by the wind's mood. That steadiness anchors the room. The storm does not weaken. It circles, presses, retreats, and returns. The cabin answers each time, flexing and holding. You feel a quiet comfort in that responsiveness. A structure that reacts feels alive, and living things adapt. As your eyes close again, the motion fades into background sensation, like the gentle rocking of a train or the sway of branches overhead. Your body stops bracing and begins to rest. Awareness remains, but it softens and loses urgency. You drift in half-sleep, conscious of movement without fearing it. The wind continues its unseen work outside. Inside, the cabin stands, not by fighting the storm, but by moving with it. Gradually, the swaying becomes part of the night's texture, no more alarming than the fire's crackle or the animal's breathing. You allow it to carry you, trusting that when the wind finally calms, the cabin will still remain, and so will you. You wake with a dull, hollow feeling low in your body, a reminder that warmth alone cannot satisfy every need. Hunger makes itself known slowly at first, without urgency. Then more steadily, your stomach tightens and releases, as if checking whether you will respond. You do not, at least not immediately. Food is valuable, especially in winter, and eating at night is avoided unless truly necessary. The fire has burned down to a quiet bed of embers. It still releases heat, though not as strongly as before. The air feels cooler now, sharper against your cheeks. In winter cabins, hunger and cold often arrive together, each strengthening the other. An empty stomach struggled to produce warmth. Warmth without fuel never lasted long. Frontier families entered the season with carefully measured stores: salted meat, dried corn, beans, root vegetables packed into cellars or buried pits. These supplies were meant to stretch across months, not just a few nights. Eating too much before sleep risked shortages later. Eating too little led to restless nights and weakened bodies. There was no perfect formula, only constant adjustment. You think about your last meal. Simple, filling enough to sustain you, but not excessive. Many settlers favored dense foods in winter, believing they burned longer inside the body. Fatty cuts of meat were valued, not avoided. Calories meant survival. Modern nutrition labels would offer little help here. Experience mattered more. Your hunger sharpens briefly, then settles into a steady ache. You pull the blanket tighter around your middle, hoping warmth will distract you. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it does not. Tonight, the hunger remains, like a quiet hum beneath your thoughts. Personal accounts from winter settlements often describe children waking hungry during the night, asking for food their parents hesitated to give, not from cruelty, but necessity. Small portions were saved for daylight, when work required strength. Night was for endurance, not renewal. Scholars continue to debate how widespread winter hunger truly was on the frontier. Some argue that good harvests and careful planning prevented severe shortages for many households. Others highlight frequent crop failures, transport delays, and unpredictable weather that made hunger a repeated reality. Lying here, feeling the dull pull in your stomach, you understand how even well-prepared families could feel strain. You hear the nearby animal shift and chew slowly. Livestock had their own winter feed, often hay stored from summer. Animals that ate well stayed warmer and healthier, reinforcing the need for preparation. People understood this, sometimes prioritizing animal feed even when their own meals were thin, knowing survival depended on both. The fire cracks softly as an ember collapses inward. The sound brings your focus back to the room. You consider rising to add a log, perhaps warming a small portion of food. But movement risks losing the heat you have gathered. You decide against it. Hunger is uncomfortable but manageable. Cold is less forgiving. You place a hand over your stomach, feeling it rise and fall with your breathing. Slow breaths help. They allow your body to settle, to accept the present state. Settlers grew used to mild hunger as a background condition during winter. It sharpened awareness but drained energy. Balancing that tension was part of the season's challenge. You think about how hunger shapes sleep. Dreams grow vivid. Thoughts drift. Rest comes in fragments. Many wrote about waking often, minds active, bodies still. Hunger prevented the night from fully releasing its hold. You feel that restlessness now, a quiet agitation beneath the blankets. A lesser-known practice appears in some winter letters. A small bite of food before sleep, hard bread or dried meat, sometimes eased hunger enough to allow rest. It was not a full meal, more a signal that fuel remained. You consider it, then decide to wait. Architectural historians still debate whether settlers intentionally built cabins to sway or whether flexibility was simply the result of available materials. Some argue that joinery methods were chosen to encourage movement. Others believe the flexibility emerged by chance and was later recognized as useful. Lying here, feeling the cabin respond instead of resist, the distinction feels less important. What matters is that it functions. The nearby animal shifts again, hooves scraping softly as it adjusts to the same movement you feel. This shared reaction strengthens your trust. Animals sense instability quickly. Its calm communicates more than theory ever could. You hear the door creak faintly in its frame as air pressure changes. The wooden bar remains secure. Settlers often reinforce doors heavily during winter, knowing wind could force them inward if they were weak. A failed door during a storm meant immediate heat loss and serious danger. You appreciate the simple strength of the bar, secured by habit and experience. Another gust presses harder, and the cabin leans just enough for you to notice. Your stomach tightens, then relaxes as the pressure fades. The structure settles back without harm. This push and release continues like an extended conversation between wind and wood. You think briefly of cabins built on open plains, where little blocked the wind. Those settlers faced even stronger forces, relying on low profiles and careful placement to survive. In forested regions, trees absorbed some of the storm's energy, though falling branches introduced other risks. Every setting involved compromise. A faint vibration passes through the floor as wind moves across the roof. Snow slides, catches, then slides again. Each shift alters the weight above you. The roof responds with a muted sound, not a crack, but a settling sigh. You listen closely and recognize the difference. This is adjustment, not failure. Your body relaxes gradually. The initial tension fades as you accept the motion. The cabin is not collapsing. It is yielding just enough to endure. That understanding allows sleep to return, though lightly, always lightly. Some settlers wrote about placing heavy objects along cabin walls during storms, believing extra weight improved stability. Chests, barrels, even stones were positioned carefully. Whether this truly made a measurable difference is uncertain, but the practice shows how people sought control where they could. Tonight, you rely instead on trust built through observation. You roll onto your side, choosing a position where the movement feels less noticeable. The blankets shift, then settle. The fire continues its low burn, unaffected by the wind's mood. That steadiness anchors the room. The storm does not weaken. It circles, presses, retreats, and returns. The cabin answers each time, flexing and holding. You feel a quiet comfort in that responsiveness. A structure that reacts feels alive, and living things adapt. As your eyes close again, the motion fades into background sensation, like the gentle rocking of a train or the sway of branches overhead. Your body stops bracing and begins to rest. Awareness remains, but it softens and loses urgency. You drift in half-sleep, conscious of movement without fearing it. The wind continues its unseen work outside. Inside, the cabin stands, not by fighting the storm, but by moving with it. Gradually, the swaying becomes part of the night's texture, no more alarming than the fire's crackle or the animal's breathing. You allow it to carry you, trusting that when the wind finally calms, the cabin will still remain, and so will you. You wake with a dull, hollow feeling low in your body, a reminder that warmth alone cannot satisfy every need. Hunger makes itself known slowly at first, without urgency. Then more steadily, your stomach tightens and releases, as if checking whether you will respond. You do not. At least not immediately. Food is valuable, especially in winter, and eating at night is avoided unless truly necessary. The fire has burned down to a quiet bed of embers. It still releases heat, though not as strongly as before. The air feels cooler now, sharper against your cheeks. In winter cabins, hunger and cold often arrive together, each strengthening the other. An empty stomach struggled to produce warmth. Warmth without fuel never lasted long. Frontier families entered the season with carefully measured stores: salted meat, dried corn, beans, root vegetables packed into cellars or buried pits. These supplies were meant to stretch across months, not just a few nights. Eating too much before sleep risked shortages later. Eating too little led to restless nights and weakened bodies. There was no perfect formula, only constant adjustment. You think about your last meal. Simple, filling enough to sustain you, but not excessive. Many settlers favored dense foods in winter, believing they burned longer inside the body. Fatty cuts of meat were valued, not avoided. Calories meant survival. Modern nutrition labels would offer little help here. Experience mattered more. Your hunger sharpens briefly, then settles into a steady ache. You pull the blanket tighter around your middle, hoping warmth will distract you. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it does not. Tonight, the hunger remains, like a quiet hum beneath your thoughts. Personal accounts from winter settlements often describe children waking hungry during the night, asking for food their parents hesitated to give, not from cruelty, but necessity. Small portions were saved for daylight, when work required strength. Night was for endurance, not renewal. Scholars continue to debate how widespread winter hunger truly was on the frontier. Some argue that good harvests and careful planning prevented severe shortages for many households. Others highlight frequent crop failures, transport delays, and unpredictable weather that made hunger a repeated reality. Lying here, feeling the dull pull in your stomach, you understand how even well-prepared families could feel strain. You hear the nearby animal shift and chew slowly. Livestock had their own winter feed, often hay stored from summer. Animals that ate well stayed warmer and healthier, reinforcing the need for preparation. People understood this, sometimes prioritizing animal feed even when their own meals were thin, knowing survival depended on both. The fire cracks softly as an ember collapses inward. The sound brings your focus back to the room. You consider rising to add a log, perhaps warming a small portion of food. But movement risks losing the heat you have gathered. You decide against it. Hunger is uncomfortable but manageable. Cold is less forgiving. You place a hand over your stomach, feeling it rise and fall with your breathing. Slow breaths help. They allow your body to settle, to accept the present state. Settlers grew used to mild hunger as a background condition during winter. It sharpened awareness but drained energy. Balancing that tension was part of the season's challenge. You think about how hunger shapes sleep. Dreams grow vivid. Thoughts drift. Rest comes in fragments. Many wrote about waking often, minds active, bodies still. Hunger prevented the night from fully releasing its hold. You feel that restlessness now, a quiet agitation beneath the blankets. A lesser-known practice appears in some winter letters. A small bite of food before sleep, hard bread or dried meat, sometimes eased hunger enough to allow rest. It was not a full meal, more a signal that fuel remained. You consider it, then decide to wait. Supplies are limited. Morning is not far. The wind outside continues, though less violent now, more steady. The storm has settled into a long, tiring phase. You match your breathing to its rhythm, letting the sound anchor you. Hunger fades slightly as your attention shifts. You adjust your position, curling inward. This conserves heat and seems to calm your stomach as well. Many people naturally slept this way in cold conditions, reducing exposed surface area. The body adapts quickly when required. Your thoughts drift towards spring, but you gently push them aside. Thinking too far ahead makes the present feel heavier. Winter nights are endured one at a time. Focus narrows. This night, this cabin, this breath. The fire glows faintly, enough to reassure, not enough to distract. The nearby animal breathes steadily, unconcerned. Its calm reminds you that hunger does not signal immediate danger. It is a message, not a verdict. Your stomach tightens once more, then loosens. You swallow, noticing dryness in your throat, and take a small sip of water. Thirst can imitate hunger. Cold air dries the body quickly. The water helps, even if only slightly. As minutes pass, the ache dulls further. Fatigue begins to outweigh discomfort. Sleep approaches again, lighter than before, threaded with awareness but possible. You accept that hunger will be part of the night. Like the cold, the sounds, and the shifting air, it does not define the night. It simply accompanies it. You let your eyes close fully, trusting your body to wake you if hunger becomes urgent. For now, it does not. The cabin holds its quiet balance. The fire breathes softly. The storm continues outside, indifferent. Wrapped in layers, stomach not full but not empty, you drift into shallow sleep. It is enough to carry you forward, 1 hour closer to morning, 1 hour closer to warmth, food, and light. You wake with an odd numbness, not pain exactly, but absence. Your fingers feel thick and distant, as though they belong to someone else. For a moment, you lie still, confused. Then instinct responds. You flex your hands slowly, drawing them toward your chest. Sensation returns in waves, first dull, then sharp, then aching. You breathe through it, familiar enough with the feeling to respect it. Cold does not always declare danger loudly. It whispers. Frostbite begins quietly, stealing warmth and sensation before the body reacts. Those who endured long winters learned to check themselves often, even in darkness, even half asleep. Fingers, toes, noses, these suffered first. You rub your hands together beneath the blankets, creating friction and encouraging blood flow. It hurts, but the pain reassures you. Pain means feeling has returned. Settlers understood this. They feared numbness more than discomfort. Numbness meant time was limited. The fire has dimmed further. Embers are faint and scattered. The room feels colder overall, though not dangerously so. Still, the outer edges of your body feel it first. You shift, pulling blankets tighter around your feet, tucking fabric into gaps you missed earlier. Every small adjustment matters. Winter medical knowledge on the frontier was limited, but experience offered clear guidance. Never rub frozen skin with snow, despite common myths. Never place numb flesh against intense heat. Gradual warming preserved tissue. Sudden heat destroyed it. These lessons were learned through painful errors and passed on quietly. You test your toes, wiggling them slowly. They respond, stiff but present. Relief spreads through you, easing the tightness in your chest. You curl your legs inward again, shielding them from the colder air near the floor. Medical historians debate how common frostbite injuries truly were compared to how frequently they appear in dramatic frontier accounts. Some argue that constant vigilance prevented many severe cases. Others suggest minor frostbite was likely widespread but underreported. Lying here, protecting your hands and feet, you sense how easily damage could occur unnoticed until morning. You think of children sleeping in cabins like this, their smaller bodies losing heat faster. Parents check them often during the night, touching cheeks and hands, waking them if skin felt too cold. Adults' sleep grew lighter when children were present. Protection outweighed rest. You feel it brush against your ankle and quickly block it with a fold of cloth. Drafts are risky not because they are powerful, but because they never stop. A steady flow of cold air can chill one area for hours while the rest of the body feels warm enough. You press your foot against the heated stone you placed earlier by the fire. It is cooled, but it still holds a trace of warmth compared to the floor. The difference helps. Heat slowly returns to your skin. You breathe evenly, allowing the warmth to build at its own pace. Some winter letters mention people waking with frost on their hair or eyelashes, their breath freezing as it left their mouths. That was often the boundary between discomfort and real danger. You briefly touch your hair. It feels cold but still soft. Noise. A quiet sense of relief follows. Your ears feel stiff as well, pressed against the pillow. You shift, covering them more carefully. Ears were especially vulnerable, exposed and often overlooked. Frostbite there caused lasting damage, something settlers often realized too late. You decide not to make that mistake tonight. The animal nearby moves again, sending a wave of warmth across the room. You welcome it, extending your hands slightly to catch what you can. Shared heat, even indirect, matters. When the fire wanes, your mind becomes briefly sharper. The cold pushes sleep away. This alertness is not fear, but awareness. You check your body again. Fingers tingling, toes sore but responsive, nose cold yet sensitive. You are still within safe limits. A lesser-known detail appears in some homestead accounts. People often slept with wool caps pulled low over their ears, even indoors, to limit heat loss. Covering the head was important. Heat escaped upward quickly. You reach for a cloth and wrap it loosely around your head. The improvement is immediate. You settle again, careful not to disturb the fragile warmth you have rebuilt. The blankets shift, then become still. Your breathing slows. Pain dulls to a faint ache, then fades entirely. Sensation steadies. The storm outside now sounds distant, its earlier violence reduced to a steady rush. Inside, the cabin feels colder but more controlled. You have moved through one of the hardest parts of the night, when the fire dims and bodies must compensate. Many winter injuries happened not during labor but during rest. Stillness invited cold. Sleep required trust but not neglect. People survived by waking often enough to act before harm began. You accept that your sleep will remain light. That is enough. You do not need deep rest, only sufficient recovery to regain strength. You tuck your hands into a warmer pocket beneath the blankets and keep them there, resisting the urge to stretch out. Minutes pass. The numbness does not return. Instead, warmth holds, delicate, but steady. Your body relaxes gradually, releasing the tension that came with uncertainty. As your eyes close again, you make a quiet commitment. You will wake if the cold shifts. You will respond before feeling fades again. This watchfulness no longer feels exhausting. It is routine. The cabin seems to pause with you. The fire rests lightly. The animal nearby remains calm, wrapped in layers and awareness. You drift back towards sleep, knowing that for now, frostbite has been kept away and morning moves closer. With each slow breath, you sense movement beside you, subtle at first, then clear. Another body shifts closer, careful not to wake you fully. The shared blanket lifts slightly, then settles again. In cabins like this, sleep was rarely solitary. Space was limited, and warmth was gathered collectively. Children slept wherever heat was most reliable. Sometimes that meant near the center of the room, closer to the fire. Other times, it meant pressed against parents or siblings. Bodies lined up closely, like stacked wood. Elders were placed where temperatures remained steady, away from drafts, but not too near sparks. These arrangements were practical, not sentimental, shaped by long winters of experience. You feel the gentle warmth of another person through layers of cloth. It changes the balance immediately. Cold that felt persistent moments earlier softens at once. Shared heat fills the narrow space between you, forming a pocket of comfort no blanket alone could create. Frontier households were often large out of necessity. Extended families lived together, sharing work and supplies. Winter sleep reflected that closeness. Beds were uncommon. Platforms, floors, and pallets were used instead. Expectations adjusted quickly. Privacy gave way to survival. You notice how breathing patterns begin to align. Slow inhale, slow exhale. Bodies naturally synchronize when resting close together. The rhythm steadies you, easing the final tension from your muscles. Sleep deepens slightly, supported by the steady presence nearby. Historians still debate how constant physical closeness shaped family life on the frontier. Some believe it strengthened connection and awareness. Others argue it increased stress and conflict. Lying here, surrounded by shared warmth, both outcomes seem possible. Pressure intensifies everything. The blanket shifts again as someone adjusts a shoulder or knee. The movement is familiar and accepted without comment. Night adjustments were common, done carefully to preserve warmth. Waking others was avoided when possible, though not always. No one complained. Complaints wasted energy. Children learned early to sleep through discomfort, guided by observation rather than instruction. They learned where to place their hands, how to curl inward, and when to wake an adult. These lessons were absorbed quietly, night after night. A lesser-known note appears in a few settlement diaries. Some families rotated sleeping positions during winter so no one endured the coldest spot too long. Fairness mattered, even when survival was the priority. Warmth became something to share, not guard. The fire flickers low, offering just enough light to outline shapes in the room. Faces remain mostly hidden, turned inward. With eyes closed, the cabin feels full, not only of bodies, but of shared purpose. Everyone depends on everyone else reaching morning safely. You shift slightly to balance the weight beside you. The platform creaks softly, then grows still. The animal nearby remains quiet, now part of the background. Heat from multiple sources overlaps, creating steadier warmth than fire alone could provide. Sleep grows heavier, though awareness does not fully fade. You remain attentive to movement, to breathing, to subtle signs that everyone remains warm enough. This shared vigilance is tiring but effective. Outside, the storm continues steadily. Inside, bodies press together, forming protection against the cold no wall could fully offer. You feel safer, not because the night is less severe, but because you are not alone. Your thoughts soften further, edges blurring. The closeness brings comfort that feels instinctive. Humans have shared warmth in this way for as long as winters have existed. The cabin is only a structure around something much older. Breathing slows. Muscles release completely. The shared heat remains steady. Sleep takes you more fully this time, wrapped not only in blankets, but in the quiet assurance of others nearby. The next thing you notice is the light, or rather, its absence. Even with your eyes closed, you sense the oil lamp has been lowered to its smallest wick or extinguished entirely. Darkness here is not mild. It is dense, pressing inward from all sides, erasing the edges of the room until distance loses meaning. You open your eyes and see almost nothing, only a faint, uneven glow from the embers in the hearth, pulsing like a slow heartbeat. When pioneers extinguished their lamps at night, they did so with intention. Oil was precious. Wicks burned down quickly. Glass chimneys cracked easily. After dark, light was never taken for granted. Most families relied solely on firelight once night fell, accepting darkness instead of fighting it. You feel that acceptance now, a quiet acknowledgement of what sight cannot reach. Darkness changes how you perceive sound. Every noise becomes sharper, more distinct. The wind outside seems closer. The breathing of those nearby is clearer. Even your own movements sound louder than expected. Without light, the senses shift, giving more weight to touch and sound. Shadows linger in memory, even when your eyes see nothing. Shapes noticed earlier, knots in wood, hanging tools, uneven beams, return as recollections rather than sight. The mind fills in gaps, sometimes imagining movement where none exists. Many people from that era describe this as one of the most unsettling aspects of winter nights. Not fear exactly, but heightened awareness. Records note that complete darkness altered sleep patterns. Without artificial light, people fell asleep sooner and woke more frequently. Night felt longer, heavier. Time seemed stretched. Hours were measured by tending fires, changes in the wind, or the rhythm of one's own body. You lie still, letting your eyes adjust, though there is little to adjust to. The faint glow of embers barely outlines the hearthstones. Everything else dissolves into black. You sense the walls more than see them. A small sound near the door makes you tense, a settling plank reacting to temperature. In the dark, these noises feel personal, as if the cabin itself is alive. You remind yourself that nothing has changed, only the light is gone. Some settlers kept lamps burning through storms, believing light reassured or protected them. Others avoided it, knowing it wasted resources and encouraged wakefulness. Historians disagree on how common overnight lighting truly was. Many journals indicate that darkness was the norm, accepted even when it made nights psychologically demanding. Modern darkness rarely reaches this depth. Streetlights, screens, clocks, all leak light into sleep. Here, night is complete. It envelopes you fully, leaving no visual distractions. This darkness neither entertains nor comforts. It simply exists. Thoughts slow in response. Without light, there is less to process. Images fade. Ideas soften. Even worries lose their edge. The mind turns inward rather than outward. You feel the blanket rise and fall with shared breathing nearby. That warmth matters more than light. You adjust your head slightly, seeking a position where darkness feels less pressing, even though nothing has changed. A lesser-known detail appears in some winter letters. Darkness made cabins feel smaller at night, compressing space and time. Others describe the opposite, a sense of vastness, as if walls disappeared into black. Which experience occurs depends on mood and fatigue. Tonight, darkness feels close, enclosing, oddly protective. The fire shifts, flickering briefly across the ceiling. For a moment, beams and logs reappear, then vanish. That fleeting glimpse reassures you. The cabin is intact, everything in place. You close your eyes again. Darkness behind the eyelids blends with darkness beyond them. Breathing deepens, guided by the absence of visual stimulation. Night encourages rest whether you want it or not. In this darkness, imagination drifts. You picture snow piling against walls, wind sculpting drifts, moonlight hidden behind clouds. These images are faint, like half-remembered dreams, drifting in and out without urgency. Some found this darkness comforting, a clear separation of day and night. Others found it oppressive. You sense both. There is comfort in being unseen, not having to perform or respond visually. There is vulnerability in not seeing what surrounds you. You listen again. No new sounds. The nearby animal breathes steadily. The roof murmurs softly. The wind has dropped to a low, constant tone. These cues suggest it is safe to relax further. Muscles release tension you did not realize you held. Without light, there is no need to remain alert. Night feels final, complete. Morning is far away, and nothing you do will hasten it. Sleep pulls you gradually, like sinking into warm water. Darkness supports this descent, softening thoughts and removing distractions. As you drift, the cabin becomes less a place and more a feeling, warmth, breath, stillness. Darkness wraps around it, holding the night together. You trust it will carry you until light returns. For now, the dark works quietly, guiding deeper rest. Sleep does not stay smooth. It bends and twists, shaped by cold, sounds, and the night's weight. Dreams feel thin, easily torn, stitched from memory and sensation. You dream of walking through deep snow. Each step is heavy, your breath loud in your ears. The cabin follows, walls rising and falling like a slow breath. Cold seeps in, blurring edges. Awareness of your body remains. Sleep is never total surrender. It is layered, like the blankets above you. Each layer offers some protection but not full escape. Winter nights inspire dreams of movement, warmth, and shelter. Fire often appeared, comforting or threatening. You feel it now, flickering unpredictably in the dream. Shifting in sleep shifts the dream. Snow turns to ash. Wind becomes breath. The change is seamless. The mind adapts as the body does. Sleep researchers studying historical patterns debate whether fragmented rest was harmful or simply different. Some suggest people adapted to lighter, segmented sleep without lasting effects. Others believe chronic disruption increased fatigue and stress. Tonight, you drift between these possibilities, too tired to care. Your dream returns to the cabin. The hearth glows brighter than it should, sparks rise toward the roof. You reach to adjust it, but your hand moves slowly, like underwater. The image dissolves before fear forms, replaced by darkness and steady breathing. A small real-world noise draws you closer to waking. The nearby animal exhales a warm puff. The dream absorbs it, becoming warm wind across an imagined field. You remain lightly asleep. Some settlers believed winter dreams carried warnings. Others saw them as discomfort-driven. Either way, they were taken seriously when nights were long and days short. You sense that seriousness now. Your body curls tighter, conserving heat. In the dream, you huddle beside others, sharing warmth. The line between waking and dreaming blurs. The cabin exists in both places at once. You feel your jaw relax. Your breathing slows further. The dream softens, losing sharp images and becoming more like pure sensation. Warmth here, pressure there, sounds without form. This is deep sleep, delicate yet real. Outside, the storm rages on. Inside, the wind fades. The roof no longer creaks. Everything grows still. You float in this quiet space, neither fully awake nor fully asleep. A memory surfaces, summer warmth, sunlight on your skin, open air. It feels distant, almost unreal, yet comforting. Many people dreamed of summer and winter as a mental refuge from the present. You let the image linger briefly before it dissolves. Your breathing stays steady. The fire in the cabin burns low, but enough to hold the room. Darkness remains complete. The dream settles into a kind of peace. As time passes, you sink into a deeper layer of rest. The mind quiets further. Thoughts lose words. Sensations blend. This is as close to deep sleep as winter nights often allow. Eventually, even the dream fades. Only warmth, weight, and the slow rhythm of breath remain. The cabin holds you. The blankets hold you. The night carries you forward. For a while, you are simply resting, not observing, not listening, just being one breath at a time. You awaken to a faint, unfamiliar stillness. The wind has softened, its earlier force now a distant murmur. The storm has not ended, only paused. In this quiet, new details appear. The air feels sharper, colder than before, and your exhale lingers, visible in the dim light. As your eyes adjust to the dying embers, you notice something unusual on the inner walls. Tiny white crystals cling to the logs, frost, delicate and jagged. It outlines cracks, forms where warm breath met cold wood, and glimmers faintly as the fire flickers. Such frost was familiar in harsh winters. When temperatures plunged, even well-sealed cabins could not stop moisture from freezing on interior surfaces. Breath, sweat, and steam condensed on walls, forming ice. People often woke to find frost decorating their homes like silent snowfall. You reach out to touch a crystal. It melts instantly beneath your finger, leaving a dark, damp mark on the wood. Cold bites your skin again. The wall is bitterly cold despite the fire. Logs store cold deeply, releasing it slowly long after the outside air warms. Some winter diaries describe mornings dusted with frost, from hair to blankets, frozen overnight. It was common to shake ice from bedding before rising. You glance at your blankets, stiff, chilled where breath escaped during sleep. Historians debate how often interior frost occurred. Some say it was rare, noted only during brutal cold, others argue it was frequent and accepted. Standing here, watching frost melt and reform, you understand how it could become routine. You sit up carefully. Joints stiff from cold and hours of stillness. The platform creaks beneath you. Flakes of ice fall silently to the floor. The fire needs tending. Embers glow faintly, barely alive. You stir them with a stick. A thin flame appears, then grows. Light pulses across the walls, revealing more frost briefly before warmth spreads. Nearby animals stir, encouraged by the returning heat. The cabin wakes slowly, one breath at a time. Winter mornings unfold cautiously. Bodies resist leaving fragile warmth. You rub your hands, easing stiffness. Cold settles into joints overnight, especially when motionless for long hours. Settlers often complained of aching hands and knees, symptoms that lingered through the season. You inhale deeply, cold air filling your lungs, clean, sharp, almost painful. Smoke is minimal. Frost melts in thin streams, darkening the logs. Some homesteads collected interior frost as water when supplies ran low. Clean, formed from breath and steam, it melted quickly near the fire. Practical, though unappealing. You look around. Frost outlines the structure, revealing seams and imperfections. Heat escaped, cold entered, a visual map guiding future repairs. As the fire strengthens, frost retreats, leaving dampness that will freeze again if the fire falters. Everything follows cycles: warm, cold, melt, freeze. Survival depends on balance. You stretch carefully, muscles protesting. Outside, the storm is quiet for now. Inside, the cabin adjusts to returning warmth. Morning is not fully here, but the night's grip loosens. You commit the fading frost to memory, a record of how closely warmth held against the cold. Another winter night survived, not comfortably, but successfully. You move slowly, feet meeting the cold floor. The night has left its mark, thin lines of light trace seams once frosted, damp patches darken logs where ice melted. Winter leaves subtle changes. You kneel near the wall, touching chinking packed hours before. Some holds, some cracked, leaving narrow gaps that let cold air in. This is normal. Cabins shift in winter. Repairs are not failure, they are life here. Settlers began mornings with maintenance first, before cooking, chores, or planning. Keeping the cabin sound was essential. You gather tools, aware the next storm will test unfinished work. You scrape loose clay carefully. Damp earth scent rises. Fresh clay and straw are pressed into gaps. Fingers stiff, but the motion warms them. Repair awakens both body and house. Some frontier accounts note children helping with chinking, learning early how walls behaved in cold, noting cracks and seams needing constant attention. Knowledge passed quietly, through repetition rather than instruction. Researchers debate how often full rechinking occurred versus small daily fixes. Some suggest major repairs seasonally, others claim constant patching in long cold spells. Working now, you suspect both are true. Big repairs prepared the cabin, daily fixes preserved it. Small fixes kept it standing. You move along the wall, pressing, smoothing, checking. Frost earlier showed exactly where heat escaped. Those pale outlines now serve as guides. Winter teaches clearly, leaving marks that cannot be ignored. Near the door, the bottom seam has opened again. Cold air slips through easily. You wedge a strip of cloth tighter, then pack clay around it. It looks rough, but it blocks the draft. Many winter repairs were like this, effective, not elegant. You stand, stretch your back, feeling muscles complain. Outside, the storm is quiet, but low clouds linger. The pause may be short. You work steadily, aware of time. Winter rewards preparation and punishes delay. You glance up at the roofline from inside, checking for stress. No new cracks, no sagging. Snow likely slid off overnight, reducing the load. Still, you make a mental note to inspect it later if conditions allow. The fire crackles behind you, stronger now. Warmth spreads unevenly, warming hands and face while your back remains cold. You rotate occasionally to share the heat. Repair work rarely comes with comfort. A lesser-known detail appears in some homestead records. People sometimes reinforced interior walls with extra planks or hides during winter, not for insulation, but to catch falling chinking and reduce drafts. If repairs failed overnight, you might add another layer near your sleeping spot later. Dampness appears along the floor where melted frost pulled. Dirt floors absorb moisture quickly, becoming cold and heavy. Some settlers scattered ash or dry sand in these spots to absorb dampness and reduce chill. You scoop ash from the hearth and spread it thinly, watching it darken as it drinks in moisture. As you work, the cabin feels more cooperative, less strained. Repairs calm the structure in a way that's hard to explain. Gaps close, drafts soften. The space feels steadier, more contained. Small changes affect airflow and temperature more than expected. There's debate among building historians about whether frontier cabins were truly durable or just constantly maintained. Standing here with clay on your hands, you lean toward the latter. Durability came from attention, not materials alone. You pause to listen. The cabin sounds different. Fewer whistles from the walls. The wind outside brushes past without finding easy entry. These audio cues matter. Sound tells you when a repair has worked. The nearby animal shifts. Hooves scrape softly. It snorts once, then settles. Its warmth adds to the room, but you remain cautious. Repair work and livestock require awareness. Startle an animal and accidents happen. You move to the opposite wall, checking seams near your sleeping platform. These held better, protected from the worst wind. Still, you add a small amount of clay where a hairline crack formed. Preventive work saves effort later. As your hands warm, movement becomes easier. You find a rhythm, press, smooth, step back, check, adjust. The process is calming, almost meditative. Winter mornings often began this way, quietly, without ceremony. Outside, light shifts slightly. Not daylight yet, but darkness thins. The sky moves from deep black to heavy gray. Morning is coming. Whether the storm agrees or not, you clean your hands as best you can, rubbing clay from under your nails, a reminder of the work done. The cabin feels more secure, ready for the hours ahead. You stand in the center, take a slow breath. Air feels steadier, warmer, repairs hold for now. Winter survival is built from these moments. Not heroics, not grand plans, but careful attention repeated again and again. The night tested the cabin. Morning answers back. You glance once more at the walls, darker where frost melted. Seams sealed, reinforced. They will shift again. Cracks will return. Maintenance here is never finished, only paused until the next need arises. With immediate repairs done, you turn toward the fire and the day ahead, knowing the cabin gained a few more hours of strength. In winter, that is often enough. You step toward the doorway, peering outside, careful not to let cold rush in. The land beyond looks reshaped by wind and snow. Drifts pile high in some places and vanish in others. You're reminded that not all winters were endured the same way. Location mattered as much as construction. Forested regions benefited from trees that broke wind and trapped snow away from walls. Firewood was closer, easier to gather. Sleep came with challenges, but the woods held warmth in ways open land never could. You imagine a cabin on the Great Plains, standing alone beneath endless sky. Wind had nothing to slow it. Settlers dug partially into the ground when possible, using earth as insulation. Sleeping below ground reduced exposure and stabilized temperature, but introduced dampness, darkness, and limited ventilation. Each solution solved one problem while creating another. In Appalachian regions, cabins were often tucked into hillsides, using slopes to block prevailing winds. Stone was more available there, sometimes reinforcing walls or chimneys. Night sounded different, less howl, more hush. Snow fell softer, but cold lingered in shaded valleys. Historians debate whether regional designs were deliberate adaptations or reflections of available materials and traditions. Likely, both forces were at work. Northern territories endured longer, darker winters. Cabins were smaller, conserving heat with lower ceilings and tighter spaces. Sleep meant months of cold, rather than weeks. People developed routines accepting darkness and stillness as constants. Further south, winters were shorter but unpredictable. Sudden freezes caught people off guard. Cabins built for mild winters struggled when cold arrived. Sleep was often frantic, with rushed repairs and improvisation. You consider how latitude shaped sleep. Longer nights meant more indoor time, more hours awake, listening. Shorter nights compressed rest. Either way, winter turned sleep into a tool rather than a luxury. Travelers noted that unfamiliar winter sounds unsettled newcomers. Forest dwellers found plains winds terrifying. Plains settlers felt uneasy in deep woods. Sleep suffered until familiarity returned. You step back inside and close the door gently. The cabin settles into quiet again. Same logs, fire, blankets, but nights shift dramatically with geography. Awareness deepens your appreciation for local choices: roof pitch, wall thickness, door placement. These details reflect lessons learned from this land, not another. Sleep here is shaped by this place, these winds, this cold. You sit near the hearth, letting its warmth seep back into you. Overthinking can pull you away from the present. Survival is immediate, local. The storm outside is the one that matters, not imagined storms elsewhere. Yet the thought lingers. Across distant lands, others lie awake in similar cabins, listening to different winds, enduring different cold. Their nights share a common purpose, even under varying conditions. You inhale deeply, letting the idea settle. The cabin creaks softly, adjusting to the new day. Repairs hold, fire burns, animals stir. Morning arrives slowly. Another night will come, with its own challenges, shaped by geography. For now, you remain present, anchored in this place, this cabin, this quiet pause between storms. You watch the fire stabilize and realize that much of what kept you alive overnight didn't originate with the cabin's builders. Long before these logs were stacked, others lived on this land and understood winter's patterns. Some of that knowledge gradually entered settler life, often unacknowledged, learned through observation rather than instruction. You consider how the cabin itself borrows ideas: insulation, wind orientation, low and tight entrances. Indigenous winter shelters varied, yet all valued heat retention and airflow. These principles quietly traveled across cultures, reshaped into log walls and hearths. Native communities taught newcomers how to use the land, choosing sites shielded by hills, avoiding low areas where cold pooled, orienting doors away from prevailing winds. Such choices mattered as much as wall thickness. Sleep improved when the land itself offered protection. You recall how evergreen branches were used beneath bedding or woven into walls, a practice from indigenous winter camps where pine and spruce created insulation and lifted bodies off frozen ground. Settlers adopted it quickly, noting its effectiveness. The scent of resin often filled cabins, a subtle comfort indoors. Early records suggest settlers also adapted fire management after observing native methods. Fires were smaller, steadier, lasting longer through the night. Large fires wasted fuel and filled the cabin with smoke. These lessons likely saved lives. You notice how you curled inward while sleeping, conserving warmth, a posture mirrored in many indigenous practices. Group sleeping and strategic body positioning minimized heat loss. Shared warmth wasn't an emergency measure, it was standard winter behavior. Historians continue debating whether indigenous knowledge was intentionally shared or quietly adopted. Some accounts describe direct teaching, others suggest settlers learned by observation. Either way, survival skills crossed boundaries more often than histories admit. Clothing comes to mind: layering, animal hides, keeping moisture away from skin. These strategies predated European settlement. Native winter clothing prioritized breathability and insulation over bulk. Settlers gradually adapted, sometimes too slowly. Trade records reveal indigenous communities exchanged not just goods but advice, recognizing dangerous cold, treating numbness, reading storm signs. Even sleep safety was part of this knowledge, though not explicitly framed that way. You glance at the walls, noting frost patterns fading. Moisture behavior was well understood by indigenous builders. Traditional shelters used materials that absorbed and released moisture differently than logs, reducing interior frost. Settlers struggled to replicate this fully. Researchers debate whether log cabins truly matched indigenous winter dwellings in extreme cold. Some claim cabins were inferior, demanding constant fire and repair. Others note cabins offered durability and storage. The reality depends on context. Each solution suited its way of life. A quiet respect settles over you. Survival here was never purely individual. It was cumulative, built on generations of experience. Even when unacknowledged, these lessons mattered. You adjust a piece of evergreen near the platform, the scent rising faintly as needles warm. Not all wisdom comes from books or blueprints. Some comes from observing what works and setting aside pride. The fire pops softly, sending warmth across the room. You imagine winter nights in lodges, earth shelters, or bark structures, where heat moved differently, smoke escaped through central openings, and sleep followed rhythms shaped by deep familiarity with the land. Settlers wrote about enduring winter. Indigenous communities wrote about living with it. The distinction is in approach. Sleep adapted naturally to cold and darkness rather than being fiercely protected. The cabin around you is a hybrid, European in form, indigenous in many strategies, even if unspoken. Your night was shaped by both. Outside, snow rests quietly. Inside, warmth holds more effectively now, thanks to knowledge gathered over many winters. You stand, stretching as stiffness eases. The day will demand work, but the night has already taught its lessons. Survival depends less on invention and more on listening, observing, and respecting what came before. You sense dampness before it affects you. The air feels heavy, not smoky, not cold, but moist, settling in your chest. Winter cabins trapped warmth and moisture, affecting health in ways not fully understood. You cough quietly, more from irritation than illness. Many settlers accepted coughing as a normal winter burden. Cold, smoke, and moisture combined to irritate lungs nightly. Tightly sealed cabins reduced drafts but limited airflow. Moisture from breath, cooking, and melting frost lingered. Walls darkened, bedding grew heavy, dampness seeped into clothing and bones. People knew damp cold felt worse than dry cold, even if they didn't fully explain why. Morning routines often involved airing bedding when weather allowed. Blankets were draped over fences or branches to let wind and sun remove moisture. On stormy days, this was impossible. Bedding stayed wet, and sleep suffered. You feel the weight of your blankets, sensing the cold they retain. Medical historians debate how cabin conditions contributed to illness. Some note respiratory infections spread easily in cramped, damp spaces. Others emphasize malnutrition and exhaustion weakening immune systems first. The cabin created conditions, hunger and labor sealed the outcome. You reflect on how sickness altered sleep. Fever caused restless nights, chills returned despite strong fires. Families took turns tending the ill, waking to check breathing and warmth. Sleep became a shared responsibility, not a personal need. Children and elders were the most vulnerable. Small bodies lost heat quickly, while older lungs struggled with smoke and cold air. Winter deaths usually came slowly, after days of weakness rather than sudden accidents. These losses seldom made headlines, but they profoundly shaped frontier life. A lesser-known detail appears in some settlement letters. People believed that certain woods used for fuel caused more illness than others. True or not, this belief influenced their choices. Many avoided burning green wood indoors, claiming it produced heavier smoke and headaches. Practical observation often became accepted medical advice. You open the door briefly, letting fresh air in despite the cold. The change is immediate. The air feels sharper, cleaner. You close the door quickly, sealing warmth inside. This small exchange was a common practice, balancing fresh air against heat. Your lungs relax slightly. The cough does not return. For now, the air is bearable, but you understand how quickly conditions could worsen. A few days of storms, unventilated bedding, or a weak fire, illness followed patterns as predictable as weather. You think about how sickness was treated at night: herbs steeped near the fire, warm stones wrapped in cloth, extra blankets layered on trembling bodies. Care happened quietly, guided by experience rather than science. Sleep during illness was shallow and broken. Dreams grew vivid. Time blurred. Caregivers slept in short bursts, always listening. Winter nights stretched longer when someone was sick. You feel grateful for your strength this morning. Tired, stiff, hungry, but intact. The night tested you, but it did not take more than it gave. That balance could shift quickly. The fire now burns steadily, drying the air slowly. Dampness lifts from the walls in faint waves. The cabin smells cleaner as moisture retreats. Relief is temporary, but it is relief. You adjust your bedding, moving it closer to the fire to dry. This small task improves the next night before it arrives. Winter survival depended on foresight, even when exhausted. Outside, the sky remains gray, heavy with snow. Inside, you breathe easier. The cabin holds warmth, but you remember not to let moisture accumulate. Illness lurks in winter, in damp corners and tired bodies. Sleep does not fully chase it away, but good habits slow its approach. You take a deep breath and let it out slowly. For now, your lungs are clear. Your body holds. The night has passed without sickness taking root. That is never guaranteed. It is earned, one careful choice at a time. You settle back against the wall, letting early morning quiet surround you. A different kind of weight presses now, not cold or hunger, but something heavier, unseen. Winter stretches on, pressing on the mind as much as the body. Nights like this do not end when storms fade. They repeat, altering the sense of time. Sleep in winter cabins was never only rest. It was endurance. Darkness arrived early and lingered. Days felt compressed, leaving only narrow hours for work and light. People lay awake longer, not just from discomfort, but from thoughts that would not settle. Watching the fire flicker faintly, you notice how easily the mind drifts inward when the outside world shrinks. Loneliness crept in, even when others slept nearby. Silence amplified worries. The future felt distant and uncertain. Winter magnified what went unsaid during busier months. Some settlers wrote about the strange quiet of winter nights, when even wildlife seemed to vanish. Without birds or insects, sound faded to wind and the occasional crack of wood. This stillness unsettled people accustomed to constant noise. Sleep came harder. Historians debate how isolation affected frontier mental health. Some argue community bonds strengthened in winter, with shared stories and routines offering comfort. Others suggest anxiety and melancholy were common, especially during long storms when travel was impossible. Sitting here, you sense both could be true. Evenings were filled with quiet conversation, storytelling, simple games, or reading aloud when light allowed. These activities eased the mind into night. Without them, the silence felt too large. Winter also forced confrontation with fear of storms, illness, or running out of food. Worries surfaced most clearly at night, when work no longer distracted from them. People managed fear through routine, not reassurance, checking the fire, touching walls, listening. Your own thoughts slow when you focus on small, concrete tasks, adjusting a blanket, shifting position, counting breaths. These actions ground you, pulling attention from abstract worry back to the body. This skill was essential. Without it, nights stretched unbearably long. Some homesteads noted that winter sadness lifted dramatically when days lengthened. Mood improved, sleep deepened, and energy returned. This shows how strongly light influenced emotional health even before people understood it. Modern life masks winter's psychological effects with artificial light and noise. On the frontier, nothing distracted from it. The season asserted itself fully, and people adapted by embracing slower rhythms rather than fighting them. You breathe steadily, resting against the wall. An animal nearby shifts, then stills. Shared presence helps even without words. Isolation is felt most sharply when alone. A quiet determination settles in. Winter does not need to be conquered tonight, only endured. One night, one careful sleep at a time. This mindset carried people through months that could otherwise overwhelm them. The fire crackles softly, offering a focal point. Watching flames gave the mind something gentle, predictable, a small anchor in uncertain times. Many found comfort there, letting worries fade as attention rested on glowing embers. Your eyelids grow heavy, not from exhaustion alone, but acceptance. The night has passed its most difficult hours. Morning approaches, even if hidden by clouds. That knowledge lightens the mental weight. You close your eyes briefly, not for deep sleep, but to rest your thoughts. The cabin holds steady. The storm has quieted. Winter remains, but this moment is manageable. Psychological endurance mattered as much as physical warmth. People survived winter not by removing discomfort, but by learning to live with it without letting it consume them. You breathe slowly, letting that truth settle. For now, your mind is calm. The night tested you, but did not break you. You remain awake, present, ready to continue when the day begins. Daylight filters through cracks, softening shadows. Romantic notions of frontier life fade in daylight. The cabin does not seem heroic or charming. It appears tired, functional, earned. Stories often painted pioneer winters as cozy, firelight, thick blankets, warm meals, peaceful sleep. Those images linger because they comfort. Standing here, you know how incomplete they are. Comfort existed, but it was fragile, easily undone by weather or fatigue. You remember the night, cold creeping in despite efforts, constant listening, waking repeatedly to adjust. Sleep arrived, but it was negotiated, never guaranteed. Life here was not constant misery, yet it was never effortless. Many later accounts softened this reality, particularly those written far from the frontier or long after it closed. They highlighted resilience over fatigue, courage over daily discomfort. Admiration is natural, but it often glosses over the strain that defined real lives. You feel that strain now, stiff joints, lingering cold, a dull ache behind the eyes. These are not dramatic injuries. They are cumulative. Winter worked slowly, eroding strength rather than striking suddenly. Cultural historians debate why the cozy frontier myth endured. Some suggest it allowed later generations to frame hardship as meaningful sacrifice. Others argue it offered comfort during uncertain modern times, a tale of simpler lives overcoming difficulty. Whatever the reason, the myth omits much of what you sense tonight. You touch the rough wall again, feeling dried clay beneath your fingers. This surface tells a truer story: uneven repairs, cracks reopened and patched repeatedly. Nothing remained static, everything demanded attention. Comfort was maintained, not assumed. Even family closeness, often praised in stories, came at a cost. Sharing space meant shared discomfort: noise, smell, limited privacy. Warmth relieved but also strained relationships. Long winters tested bonds as much as they strengthened them. You recall how sleep is often portrayed as restful and renewing. In truth, it was frequently partial. People woke exhausted yet worked anyway. Rest accumulated slowly over weeks rather than nights. Endurance mattered more than recovery. Frontier letters sometimes reveal surprise at how much effort it took simply to stay warm at night. Effort unexpected before first-hand experience. Hardship was anticipated in work, not in rest, and this realization reshaped expectations quickly. You move toward the hearth, poking the fire again. The action feels ordinary, stripped of drama. This was survival most of the time. Small tasks repeated without ceremony. The cabin creaks softly as temperature shifts. You no longer flinch. Familiarity dulls fear. The structure earns trust by lasting, not by perfection. You think about myth-making. People remember outcomes, not processes. Survival overshadows the countless small discomforts that led to it. Nights like this fade into summaries and slogans. Standing here, you carry a fuller picture. Not heroic suffering, not cozy simplicity, but a life shaped by constant adjustment, where sleep served as a tool, not a retreat. You breathe deeply, relief that the night has passed, respect for those who endured this repeatedly without certainty of gentle spring. Myths soften edges, reality sharpens them. Tonight, you hold both, but trust your body's memory more than stories. As daylight strengthens, the cabin reveals every floor and structural detail. It stands because of effort, not charm. Sleep happened because of work, not ease. You step back, letting the lesson settle. Frontier comfort was real but earned inch by inch, hour by hour, through patience rather than romance. Moving through the cabin, details invisible at night become clear. Even weak winter light exposes traces of past winters. The structure tells its own story, not through words, but through wear. Near the base of a wall, a log bears shallow grooves where tools struck repeatedly, suggesting repairs rather than initial construction. Chinking appears thicker in layers, new clay pressed over old straw from different harvests. This is not a frozen moment, but a record of ongoing care. Cabins were never finished objects, they were continuous projects. Archaeological studies show uneven wear patterns. Floors smoothed along narrow paths, hearthstones cracked from heating and cooling, roof beams reinforced as sagging began. These traces show how people actually lived and slept, not how plans imagined they would. You notice the sleeping platform sits slightly off-center, closer to the wall than symmetry suggests. Experience, not design, guided placement. Less exposure to sparks, fewer drafts. Choices refined over countless nights like the one you just endured. Researchers debate whether excavated cabins accurately reflect daily life. Some argue later modifications obscure originals. Others see them as the most honest evidence, revealing how structures evolved with use. Looking now, you side with the latter. Change tells the truest story. A faint discoloration on the ceiling draws your eye. Smoke stains mark fires that burned too hot or poorly ventilated. Layers suggest different periods of use. Cracks in the hearthstone filled with soot and ash reveal repeated expansion and contraction. Function mattered more than perfection. Archaeologists sometimes find animal bones beneath platforms, dropped accidentally or stored, indicating how food, sleep, and work shared the same space. Boundaries were flexible, everything overlapped. You imagine future hands uncovering this cabin, brushing away debris, interpreting marks you leave behind, a thicker clay patch, a worn floorboard. They would piece together a story, not knowing names, but understanding needs. Debate exists over how representative surviving cabins are. Many failed cabins left no trace. The survivors may be better-built examples, but even they show strain. A small notch in a wall log likely held a tool or lantern. Smooth edges testified to repeated use. Even in hardship, people shaped spaces to daily routines, including sleep and night work. Running your hand along the platform, you feel shallow depressions where bodies rested night after night. These marks reflect habit, warmth, and safety, not accident. Less-known discoveries include buttons or bits of cloth tucked into wall gaps, perhaps to block drafts. Personal items became part of the structure itself. Stepping back, you see the whole room, nothing random. Every imperfection reflects response to need. Archaeology does not reveal heroics, it shows repetition. Sleep, repair, fire, rest, over and over. The cabin is quieter now, as if aware it is being studied. Its marks are not flaws, they are evidence of endurance. People slept here not because it was ideal, but because it was possible. You nod to the walls, acknowledging all they have witnessed. The night you spent here fits into a longer pattern. One winter among many, one sleeper among countless others. As you prepare to move forward, you carry this understanding with you. The past leaves traces everywhere, you only need to slow down to notice them. You return to the sleeping space one last time. Not out of need for rest, but because the body remembers where it endured the night. The blankets remain rumpled. The platform still bears the shape of sleep. Morning has not erased the effort it took to reach this point, it has only softened it. Outside, the storm has passed, leaving behind a quiet that feels earned rather than empty. Snow lies heavy and clean, reshaping the world into something calmer than it was hours ago. Winter has not ended, it has only paused. You recognize now that relief comes in intervals, not in conclusions. Inside the cabin, the fire burns brighter again, fed carefully. Warmth spreads more evenly this time. Daylight filters through cracks and knots, revealing the space fully. Nothing appears new, everything shows signs of use. That feels right. You sit and let your body settle, acknowledging the fatigue that remains. This tiredness is not failure, it is proof of effort. Those who live this way learn to accept lingering exhaustion as normal. Strength is measured by continuation, not comfort. Sleep tonight will come again, bringing the same careful calculations: how much wood to burn, where to place bedding, who sleeps where. The routine will repeat, shaped slightly by lessons from the last night. Survival is iterative, each night informs the next. Historians still debate how people maintain morale through long winters. Some credit faith, others routine, others sheer necessity. Sitting here now, you sense that sleep itself was a form of morale, not perfect rest, but enough to continue. Winter narrowed focus. Days became about essentials. Nights became about preserving warmth and breath. This simplicity was not peaceful, but clarifying. Everything unnecessary fell away. The cabin stands quietly, repaired and reinforced just enough. It will require attention again. Winter homes were never finished. They were negotiated spaces, constantly adjusted in response to cold. You place your hand on the wall one last time. It is warmer now, no longer rimmed with frost. The memory of ice remains, though, shaping future choices. Outside, light strengthens slowly, and the world begins to move again. Inside, you feel ready to move with it. The night did not defeat you, it instructed you. You inhale deeply and exhale slowly, feeling warmth fill your chest. Another winter night survived, not easily, not comfortably, but successfully. As the day unfolds, your body carries the quiet knowledge of enduring the next one. The fire settles into a gentle rhythm. The cabin breathes softly. Snow outside reflects pale light, softening the harsh edges of the world. The weight of the night lifts from your shoulders, replaced by a calm tiredness that asks nothing more than patience. There is no need to rush. Winter teaches slowness. Each movement is deliberate. Each breath is enough. You allow your thoughts to soften. No longer scanning for danger, no longer counting hours. The sounds around you fade into a steady hush. Wood cracks quietly. Embers glow without urgency. The cabin holds its warmth for now. You imagine lying back down, not to sleep deeply, but to rest without vigilance. Muscles loosen. Breathing lengthens. The night feels distant, already becoming memory. Nothing requires fixing. Nothing needs deciding. The storm is gone. Morning has arrived. You let the quiet carry you gently, like a hand resting on your shoulder. Sweet dreams.